hi again, everyone. Hi to everyone in JMA. I'm Gabby, Gabriel Herrera-Lim. I was a member of JMA from 2014 to 2018, so I graduated around 3 years ago. I was part of the externals committee for from all the way from first year to when I graduated. So uh, JMA is pretty active. I would say. As part of the externals committee, I eventually became ex-chair and became president in my last year. So I graduated in 2018 with a degree in BA, Business Administration. Most of what I did was on marketing. I joined a lot of competitions. So the general BA track, as you could say, on marketing. And then I eventually graduated with a master's in business analytics from the University of Notre Dame in 2020, so last year. After that, I went home. My first job after graduating was as a consultant at Asian Development Bank. I joined there in July last year, a couple of months after graduating. My main role there was to create data centric reports on e commerce in the Asia Pacific region. So, studied a lot about the infrastructure, the state of e commerce, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic in different parts of the Asia Pacific region. And then after my project ended, I moved to Lazada. So I continued being on the e-commerce track. Now I'm a senior business intelligence analyst at Lazada. I joined back in April 2021. So I've been in the company almost exactly 6 months. So there, currently my main responsibilities are um, creating tools, building dashboards, steering overall decision making with different analyses to support the various business units. So, in terms of the different business units that I'm in charge of directly, since we're a rather small team, I'm in charge of multiple things. So, right now, I'm in charge of the Lazada cashback program. So, whenever you buy certain things, um, you get money when it gets delivered to you. And then I study everything from start to finish from there, and promotions and everything. I'm also in charge of the supply and assortment department, or the business unit in charge of the supply and assortment in Lazada, as well as Lazmall. So I'm also in charge of all the data surrounding Lazmall. Um, so what led me to data? I wasn't really interested in data at first, especially in college when I was in UP, because we didn't really have a lot of exposure on it. So we focused a lot of marketing when I was in undergrad. There weren't a lot of data related classes. So if you're in BA, you might see that there aren't a lot of data related classes. It's mostly marketing, mostly finance, operations, ethics, history of business for some reason. And I didn't really know how and where to start. I knew a couple of friends that were into data, into coding and stuff like that, but I didn't really have a lot of experience. I didn't have a lot of exposure then. I didn't really know where to learn. After college, I was actually in law school for a grand total of 2 weeks. But thanks to some divine intervention, I found myself outside of law, so I had to look for something new. Uh, and I had a lot of time to think about what I really wanted to do. I realized that after having a few years in marketing, um, wanted to see what was on the back end of things, because usually my work was on the front end. Obviously, if you're in marketing, you think about the executions, you think about the target market and stuff like that, but that not necessarily what comes in the back end of running a business, or in the back end of any marketing campaign, for example. So I realized that data was really taking off locally. A lot of people were getting into it. A lot of people were getting jobs related to data. A lot of people were pursuing different fields of study, fields of work based on data. So I realized it was something that I could do, something that I was interested in doing, because there was a lot of exposure in data from sports, from marketing, things that I was generally interested in, but didn't really have the opportunity to get into. So um, that's where I got into data. That's where I got into grad school. And eventually, that's what led me to where I am now. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about uh, this topic, data analytics. So this topic is incredibly broad. and it's really dependent on your line of work. Especially in JMA, I know a lot of members of JMA are from different committees. Obviously, you have different roles. Yeah, you come from different colleges, different courses. So, data in one way or another will play into your future career, whatever it might be. But I'll try to get give you a bit of an overview on what it is and how it's used, how I use it currently, and how you can use it currently as a member of JMA and eventually in your career. So, just a disclaimer, I'm not a full expert on the depth of analytics and the tools that I'm about to explain. There's a saying that my professor used to say that what do you call this? Basically, it means that we're all new to analytics. Whatever you think you might know about analytics, you only know just 1% of what you should know, or what the realm of analytics is. So um, there are a lot of things that I used to know or that I used to learn, but now I don't use. There are things that I don't know how to do at all, but other people know how to use, and vice versa as well. So a lot of the knowledge and the skills relevant to one role or industry, it won't be relevant to another. So you really have to understand what the industry standards are, what the best practices are by researching, trying out different projects, and creating a network of references of people who use data in their work. For example, if you're in marketing, obviously you know how data is used in marketing. So it's good to build a network around that, try out different projects, um, try out different or research on different things that have to do with how or how data is used in marketing. Or say for example, you're into sports. If you want to manage sports from the business side or from the sports side of things, there's obviously a lot of data that plays into that. So whatever you think you might want to do, and if you want to use data to capitalize on that kind of work, there's really something for everyone there. And of course, I'm just one person doing one kind of thing. If you want to learn even more, there's a lot of resources online that can supplement what I'm about to talk about. So, just to start on a general note, data analytics is basically it revolves around data. Obviously, as you can see from the name. So, what is data? No. So, one formal definition that we used before in school, and what I tend to stick to when I talk about data, is it's related items of information considered collectively and used for reference, analysis, calculation, for strategy, and different things. So there are two important words that I found there. It is something that my professor noted out even before. One important term is that these are related. So all records of information have different characteristics, features, data points that are used in collaboration with one another to form different insights, to form different kinds of information, different records of information. So different ways that these characteristics come together to make one unique point of reference. Say, for example, if you're recording transactions, the transaction has a date, the transaction has amount of money paid, the transaction has the item paid for, the transaction has the method of payment, the method of delivery, and everything like that. So, the second important term there that I saw was the word collectively. So data points often come as one and are often analyzed comparing features with one another. So you can really define a point of information by just one characteristic. You have to put it in context with another. So it'll be clear, it'll be used clear as I go on. So that's generally the basic term of or the basic definition of how I use data. Analytics, on the other hand, is how you use data. So it's exploring, interpreting, communicating patterns in data for various purposes. So when it comes to business, it's obviously used for strategy, creating insights. It can also be retroactive in answering queries. So when you have historical data, when you want to answer questions, say for example, who had the highest who had the highest amount of sales, who had the highest member grade if you're in JMA and stuff like that. So it can be used in any way or form, just to answer questions, just to have insights on many specific issues or problems that you might have. And just to add to that, the reason why data analytics is important outside of the field of business or anywhere you might use it. Generally, as humans, something that I realized actually when I was more focused on marketing, we're affected by certain biases. So, an example of that is when I would create marketing presentations before, when I would create marketing campaigns based on a certain target market. We didn't really have a lot of data sources, or we didn't really think of it as very important when we were making marketing campaigns. Uh, it's a big regret now because obviously data is everything. But before, we were affected by a lot of biases. You're pretending to analyze the market, but we are using a lot of our gut instincts to say what the consumer insight is. So, for example, consumer insight is something that you're not really part of, but okay, I'm assuming that they think this way, or I know this is how I feel about this product, so maybe this is how they feel about that product. But that's not necessarily true all the time, no? So, um, data helps you get rid of those biases. It tells you the facts about what happened. So, for example, this is how this customer reacted to this thing. He or she is from this demographic. This demographic feels this certain way about this thing. So maybe this is how you should guide your strategies, things like that. So that's one of the important points of data analytics. No? When it comes to the type of analytics, there's four definitive types of analytics that's generally used throughout all the industries that make use of data analytics. So first is the descriptive. So it's the most basic. It generally answers the question, what happened? So you look at historical data and you describe exactly what happened in that scenario. So for example, you're investigating what happened in the previous month of sales. You're investigating what happened in a certain game. You're investigating what happened in uh, your target market in the previous month. So that just answers what happened. It's just a straightforward layout of the facts that happened, the number of things that occurred, or the number of times something happened, and things like that. The second type is diagnostic. So it answers why that thing happened. So you compare historical data, you drill down. For example, you want to dig deeper into why this certain group of people acted this way. Then, for example, you saw under that there was a subgroup that acted exactly how that general group acted. So you could say that one subgroup is a driver of that larger group of people. You can also find correlations, things that increased at the same time. So generally, one thing that we look at when it comes to e-commerce is what drives revenue, diba? So for example, we had a spike in revenue um, for a certain month, and we're trying to investigate why that happened. So we look at it on a per day basis, for example, on a most basic level, the amount of revenue that we got per day. So we saw that for most days, the amount of revenue stayed relatively the same. It was the same as the status quo in other months and stuff. But the only day that was different was when we had a major campaign, for example. So say we had 11/11, 9/9, 10/10, things like that. So that was the driver of the increase in revenue. Because everything else you saw stayed the same, but one day drove everything higher and led to a difference in your overall view. The next part is predictive. So it answers the question, what is likely to happen? So it makes use of forecasting, modeling. If you're familiar with line graphs, generally, they go up, down, sideways, straight, horizontally. From there, you can, if it's, say, for example, the only factor that affects your business over time, you extend the timeline a bit, and then there you can forecast. It's a very simplistic way of uh, defining it, but that's generally how it's used. So you can forecast, you can create models that predict what is likely to happen when you do a certain thing, what is likely to happen if you make use of a certain product, if you make use of a certain strategy, and things like that. And the last type of analytics that is generally used is prescriptive. So from everything that from everything that you found out, from what happened, why it happened, what is more likely to happen, the prescriptive type of analytics directs what should be done. So based on machine learning, simulation, what will most likely lead to your desired output. So from there, that's where you have to understand what the main business problem is, or what the main problem is in whatever you're doing. So what is your desired output? And from the data that you collected, from the things that you were able to forecast, from the things you were able to make a model of, what should be done, or what is the best course of action for that type of for that kind of problem. So some common use cases where data is used in places that you're most likely familiar with. Obviously, there's Spotify. At the end of the year, you guys have sort of end of year summary of what you guys listen to. Rap, I think it's called Rap, and it summarizes everything that you listened to in the last year, which artist you listened to, what kind of music you listen to. So everything that you listen to on Spotify, everything that you do on Spotify is being recorded, and on an even deeper level, when it comes to their products like Discover Weekly, radio, song radio, album radio, artist radio, or stuff like that. Each song on Spotify, if you look into the deeper depths of their data, each song recorded on Spotify has certain features. So there are some important features that, for example, there's danceability. It's kind of abstract, but it's basically a combo of tempo, rhythm, stability, etc. They formed that and put it together and made it a metric called danceability. So there's a level of danceability from 0 to, I would say, 10 or 1, something like that. There's also acousticness. So, for example, if you're listening to a song that's mostly acoustic guitar, obviously the acousticness is higher. But if you're listening to, say, rap music with not a lot of acoustic background music, it's generally lower in that scale. So it measures it based on that as well. There's one other thing that they measure. It's called speechiness. Speechiness. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but um, it's basically measuring the amount of pure speech that's on a certain song. So, for example, you're listening to a podcast. Obviously, that's purely speech, except for maybe the entrance song or the ending song, or maybe any ads that you have. So, it's basically marked as purely speech. There's also a mix of music and speech. So, that's generally like rap music or acoustic music. And there's also the other side of the spectrum, which is mostly instrumental. So that's things that uh, people use to use as samples and stuff like that. The ones that don't have any voice at all. They also measure valence, so the positivity of the song, the words of the song, how positive they are in terms of the words that they use and stuff like that. It's also used in other ways and forms, but in generally, they use that also to measure songs, and then that's how they put uh, alike songs together. So that's how they form your Discover Weekly. So things that they take records of what you listen to all time or recently, and put together similar songs that might be in your taste based on what you listened to prior. So another platform that data is very widely used is on Netflix. So obviously, a lot of us have used Netflix in the last year since we're stuck at home and we don't have anywhere to go. Basically, as you can see on the homepage, first and foremost, you have recommendations, diba? So you have user recommendations based on your previous watches, based on things that you finished. So they record everything that you do there, all your activity, whether you finished a series from start to finish, you only did one season, you only watched one episode. So it knows, like, if you only finished one episode, you're not very interested in that kind of show, diba? Or that maybe something turned you off and something like that. So they record things like that and put everything together to put together recommendations for you. That's why everything that you see on your homepage is very interesting. Things that there are things outside of your usual realm of watches that you really have to search the depths of Netflix for, because it's not in your recommendation. So that's where they put things together and present it to you on a platter, basically. They also use data to create or even revive shows. So say if you had a question, what kind of shows do people want to watch, um, based on how they finished, or based on their activity with a certain show that was canceled, for example. So say a large majority of viewers, say 70%, watched all available seasons of a canceled show. There might be some interest in reviving the show, and they were able to do this uh, with some shows. I think Designated Survivor, they were able to do that. So they saw that a lot of people, uh, not only in social media but on the platform itself, they showed a lot of interest in that show. So eventually, when it got canceled, they were able to take the rights to it and revive the show for one more season uh, under Netflix. Parang ganun. Um, they even went and used data to create shows. So if you're familiar with the show House of Cards, it was one of the first flagship shows of Netflix. So basically, they used data to put together the components of the show that worked, what they felt was interesting to the different people who were in Netflix's target market at the time. So they found out that there was interest in the UK or the BBC version of House of Cards. So they wanted to put something similar together until they eventually put the same thing but in US form together. They also found a lot of fans of Kevin Spacey. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. But at the time, there were a lot of big fans of Kevin Spacey. There were also a lot of fans of shows directed by David Fincher. So they put all of those together. So as you may know, the US version of House of Cards starred Kevin Spacey, and it was directed by David Fincher, and it was one of the most streamed sources of content in the US and 40 other countries, I think. And generally, it was very successful. So that's how they were able to use data to maximize something that other platforms may not have realized before. Diba? So how I use data currently is in e-commerce. I've been in e-commerce for the last year, and we use data for a lot of things. Talaga, basically, since everything is online, everything is recorded. Talaga, from what I see, there's so much that goes into a single action. So everything from opening the app, from where you open the app, from your purchases, your page views, your adding to cart, whatever you add to cart, even your hesitation on something. Say, for example, you're about to check out something, but you went back and checked Shopee instead. Uh, they don't know that you visited Shopee, but they know you were about to check out, but you hesitated. So they want to find out why. Diba? There are recommendations based on viewing and buying history. If any of you have bought from Amazon before, they were one of the first to put together assortment bundles. So these were recommendations of items that were frequently bought together. No, so say for example, you're buying computer parts. Say you bought a CPU. They also recommended computer cases, motherboards, graphics cards, and stuff like that were already put together, and they gave you a price of the ones that were most put together when people would check out, and it would be recommended to you. And more often than not, it would work. You can also do that or you can also investigate the viewing and buying history of your users, so you can see what they're more willing to buy or whatever they have propensity to buy. So you can do targeted campaigns as well. So if your users are from a certain demographic and you have a campaign, say for example, it's a month that you're sponsored by baby food or baby product. So obviously you're gonna target push notifications uh, for accounts that are known to be either have kids or have bought children or have bought baby food, baby clothes, baby other baby things before. So that's one thing that they use data for. And one interesting thing actually that I saw before, that Target, the supermarket, or the supermarket chain in the US did before, was they would send out coupons. They would generally send out coupons in the mail, and people would get them based on their buying preferences or their buying history in their records. It was a little old fashioned, but they were able to use data and maximize that, so people would come back obviously to their store and buy more. So one thing that they did before was that they supposedly accidentally sent a set of coupons for baby products, for baby food, formula, baby clothes, and everything to a teenager in the States. No? Then the father, he got really mad because obviously he saw it in the mail, and then he was angry at Target, as most white people are. He said that, why would you give this to my daughter? She's not pregnant. She hasn't done this type of stuff before, and it's incredibly rude of you to do this. Then he threatened to sue and things like that. But eventually, they saw that this woman, she was able to get these coupons because she would buy things before. I'm not sure what things, but she would buy things before that led them to believe that she was going to be pregnant, or that she was going to give birth, and things like that. So they were able to target her based on her buying preferences, and eventually they were right. She actually was pregnant, and uh, so yeah, obviously that shows the difference between hard data and gut feelings, no. So it really shows that there's something that can be driven by both, putting together data and what your strategies are. Obviously, another thing that data is most maybe infamous for is on social media. So social media really captures everything that you type, you say, you visit, and they do this kind of analysis called sentiment analysis or text analysis. So they basically get all the things that you type, maybe on Messenger. So for example, if you message something like, "Oh, I want to buy ramen," or "Oh, I want to buy a new laptop." For example, you tell a friend you want to buy a new laptop, and you get surprised because like hours later, you get an ad on Instagram for a new laptop. So they were able to use your data, ethically or not, um, to sell those data points basically to companies that were sending out ads through Facebook or Instagram and other social media networking sites. And they were able to lead you to the right recommendation, no matter how scary it is. So that's how they use data as well.